Well, and James, I think one thing that was compelling about your article was how, and I'm learning some of these terms. I really don't know a lot about gambling in sense, but you mentioned like sharps. You talk about a certain level of expertise. So there are these insiders to a certain degree that are know the sport of of gambling. They know the sport of betting well. They're true experts. So I'm curious that there also seems to be a way that the odds or things are rebalanced sometimes based on the experts that are leaning in to certain bets, right? It's like, okay, wait a minute, if all these experts are betting this, right, there's sort of a rebalancing effect. So do you think in sports that you can sort of, squeeze all the juice out of the fruit by figuring out how to get value and risk, and then the sports are constantly forced to readjust? Like, where does this actually go? Take basketball. Like, all right, everybody's firing up 3 pointers, right? Well, if at some point everybody's shooting 3 pointers and everybody's doing the same thing, what have you seen in your experience where then what actually has to happen next for you to still maintain a sport, real fair competition?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. This is another one of those like obvious things that to me, when I was younger, I was thinking like a three-pointer is worth 50% more than a two-pointer. How are teams not, just doing some simple math here and determining, hey, we should be chucking up threes all the time? But you see, one of the things interesting to me is like the first teams to adjust are the ones that are like directly in the face of something. So I back when Daryl Morey was still with the Houston Rockets, he was one of the people I chatted with, and when the kind of, hey, James wants to go work for a team came out, and he talked about how like the first year the Rockets tried this threes and threes approach, the teams that were playing against them would start shooting more 3 pointers against them specifically than they would against other teams. And it's like you're kind of teaching the opposition the correct strategy by doing it. It's kind of funny. And we talked about this because when I was on Jeopardy, I was playing what I think is very close to like a mathematically optimal strategy of betting very heavily on daily doubles, looking for them aggressively, things like that. And you would see the people who were playing against me would they may have come in with their own approach, but they realize, okay, we have to play this strategy to beat James. The only people who have beaten me basically played the exact way I did. Hunt aggressively, bet everything when you hit the daily double, that kind of stuff. And so it was funny. Like something clicked in my head. I remember like when I was betting basketball that season, I gave the Rockets a terrible defensive efficiency grade, but it turns out their defense was okay. They were just teaching the opponents how to play offense better, which is kind of funny. But it's tricky. Like, I mean, you have to decide what's right for viewer experience right now. If the NBA just decides, okay, there's way too many 3 pointers now, what can we do about this? Well, I mean, it's tough. Can you eliminate the 3 point shot at this point in the sports trajectory? I don't think you can. You could push back the line maybe a little bit, make the court a little wider so that the corner threes can be a little longer. But it's tough. I think that the adjustment that baseball is going to make to spin rate pitchers and strikeouts right now is going to be an interesting thing. I'm not sure what effect the crackdown on sticky stuff is going to have, but I'm interested to see it. It's always been kind of a little give and take. If the pitchers get too dominant, we change the rules a little bit. If people are hitting too many home runs, maybe we can deaden the baseball. You gotta find that sweet spot.
Yeah, no doubt. It's funny that you mentioned your strategy in terms of basketball strategy, because I remember when I was watching, like I thought your Jeopardy strategy was very Rays like or Billy Bean Moneyball like, because you played the game differently and more aggressively than anyone had ever played it. And I always wondered, since you were such a baseball fan, was that more than a coincidence?
Oh, I mean, I don't know that it was baseball specifically, but it definitely, I think that the attitude that an advantage gambler has, I think was the most important thing. If you're a savvy gambler, you don't mind being taken out of your comfort zone if it's what you need to do to make a profit. Like if you, let's say you're a card counter and you find this deck that's just completely rich in aces and face cards, and you normally wouldn't bet more than $100 on a hand of blackjack. But if you see the best deck you're ever going to see in your life, maybe you raise it up to 1,000. And to me, I came in knowing that I could get the daily double right 90% of the time. And to me, being offered even money on a 90% bet, that's just a slam dunk. You want to bet as much as you can, as long as you're not jeopardizing a free victory. So like at the end of an episode, if I already had a big lead, I would ease up a little bit because I didn't want to take a small chance that I could wreck a sure thing. But leading up to that, it's just too good of an offer to pass up.
All right, let me ask you it this way. It felt like Jeopardy fans reacted to you the way, not just that you won, but the way you won. Kind of like traditional baseball fans now react to analytics. Did you feel an analytics type backlash?
Yeah, absolutely, I did. I think there were some people who wrote columns that like specifically compared the two things, and I mean, it made sense. I very much came at this from like a Moneyball approach. Like here is something that people aren't doing and should be doing, and that can be my advantage over them. And I think this is getting tough in sports now because front offices are really smart. They're doing a good job these days, but if you identify something that the other people are not doing mathematically well, then that is your chance to take an advantage over them.
True, but that backlash is still a real thing. I'm fascinated by it because I think that thinking in the game now is amazing. The information in baseball now is amazing. So why would teams not want to use all of it? But there's still a backlash to doing that. So what would you tell traditional baseball fans who complain all the time that analytics are ruining baseball?
Well, I got to tell you, on some level, I agree with them. I'm a guy who likes seeing balls in play and stolen bases and things like this, and they are kind of being phased out of the game by, determining that hey, these are not the best way to win baseball games. And I don't know, it does hurt the viewer experience a little bit for me, but I think, just in general, you can't crime a team for trying to win, and they're not breaking any rules or anything. If things really get too terrible, hey, we can tinker with some stuff. I would like to see fewer strikeouts in baseball. I think that we can work with that, but strikeouts are really good if you're a pitcher, so I can see why they're prizing them. Maybe they can tinker with the baseball somehow and kind of restore some balance to that.
Yeah, Doug and I were just talking about this. They're obviously cracking down on spin rate, but now the next frontier is velocity and how you neutralize velocity. You have a favorite idea that you would like to see baseball try?
That's going to be tough. I don't think I can provide any. What can you do? You have to like disincentivize it. And right now, the pitchers who throw the hardest are getting the most strikeouts and providing the most value to their teams. And I mean, like other than the fact that they're hurting their elbows and shoulders, really, like what disincentive is there? It's not a whole lot.
Well, James, I mean, one thing I'd have to add, they are breaking the rules. That's
well, okay. I mean,
there's a lot of so I guess my question is, do you look at baseball trying to adapt fairly quickly to get ahead of these things, right? So let's say sticky substances. What does that do to a betting line? Like I noticed in your article you talk about like, okay, a player gets hurt, all of a sudden there's an advantage to betting in game because they don't have time to rebalance things as quickly. But what about a rule change? Like, okay, they're going to crack down literally today as we're recording on sticky substances. What are those type of things, these type of rule changes do to betting lines typically?
Yeah, so that's interesting. You don't entirely know because I'm not a kinesiologist. I can't tell you exactly what spider tack will do to offense if you just get rid of it overnight. First of all, nobody knows how strictly these things are going to be enforced. They can talk a big game, but they might not actually want to throw Jacob deGrom out in the first inning because he, had something weird looking on his arm. So it's kind of a big guessing game, but I will say, like, this is a thing that gamblers can get an advantage on if they're paying attention. I remember the one season that the old XFL was in business. They started out with a big talk about how we weren't going to have any of these rules that make the NFL all boring. But then, they kind of changed the rules by week as they discovered that things weren't working. And I wasn't gambling yet at that time, but people who were, they would pay attention to the news, and they would, like, if they changed the rules for counting pass interference, they would bet like the under on every single game that week and clean up because, this was a thing that they were paying attention to more than the books were. And, everyone knows that the sticky stuff thing is happening, but I think that nobody is really certain exactly what kind of effect it's going to have. And if you are the type of person who has some inside knowledge of, which pitchers are benefiting the most from this kind of stuff, that could be real good. But I'm not connected enough to have that sort of knowledge.